Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFO DFS show for, is it Thursday? Yeah, Thursday, April the 1st. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thursday, getting closer and closer to the weekend. Got my Detroit Tigers hat on because for at least one day, we are the best team in baseball. At least for an hour, we were the only undefeated team in baseball, which was probably the only time I'm going to say that all season. So I can wear this hat proudly today. But yeah, yesterday seemed like a pretty good day for us. I got a lot of feedback from yesterday's show, a lot of feedback from our DFO premium subscribers yesterday saying, thanking me for all the money that they won last night, because a lot of people went with the Colorado 3, Toronto 1 stack, and it absolutely went off. So yeah, I mean, Colorado 3, I think our secret is finally out on Colorado 3, unfortunately, but we'll find another Colorado 3 somewhere in the weeds here in the coming days. But yeah, our secret's finally out on them, but huge night for us, huge night for, hopefully it was a huge night for you, and hopefully we have another huge night again tonight. So Thursday, we got a 9-game slate on our hands. Again, if you're new to the show, you can subscribe to DFO Premium for as little as $9.99 for the week, and you can get everything that you're about to see in the Google Sheets documents much earlier in the day. And then, yeah, we have a Discord channel there as well where we just talk DFS all day long. All the late breaking news is posted in there as well, so you don't miss any of the late news, late lineup changes or anything like that. So, yeah, and it supports me. So if you enjoy the show, please sign up for DFO Premium. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as we go, and I'll get to those. But let's get right into it. To start this 3-game slate, first off, Graham says, cleaned up by stacking Colorado 3 and Toronto 1 with Theodore last night. Bought a premium sub with the winnings, Brock. You crushed it. Thank you very much for subscribing, Graham, and congratulations on your win. Tony says, is it possible to play Colorado 3 if they're not on the slate today? I mean, you could. I don't know if they're going to have as big of a night as they did last night, but if you want to try, go for it. Colorado 3 plus DFO equals cash. Yes, it is. What's more disappointing, reaching down and finding water and not beer, or playing Toronto 2? Definitely playing. Actually, that's probably even. I'd rather have a beer than water. Toronto 2 is crushing, though. Is there a DraftKings we can join that you put up? I remember you tweeting about it a couple nights ago. I don't have one tonight, but I can try to create one here as I go. But let's get into tonight's slate first. So starting with the goalies, we've got Ottawa hosting the Montreal Canadiens. Philip Gustafson was in the starter's crease for the Senators, so likely starting for them. Jake Allen confirmed for the Canadiens. For the Bruins, they are going to Daniel Vlader. And the Penguins will go with Casey DeSmith because Tristan Jarry is day-to-day with an injury. No idea who starts for the Islanders. Ilya Samsonov confirmed for the Washington Capitals. The Panthers will go with Chris Driedger. We will most likely see Thomas Greiss for the Detroit Red Wings after a pretty brutal performance from Calvin Pickard the other night. Sorry, a little bit distracted as I try to create a contest here. Tampa Bay Lightning will almost certainly will go back to Andre Vasilevsky tonight. Elvis Merzlikins confirmed for the Blue Jackets. On the tail end of a back-to-back after their first win in 19 games or 18 games, Dustin Tokarski confirmed for the Sabres. Most likely going to see Igor Shesterkin for the Rangers, but again, not 100% unconfirmed, no reports out of them. The Predators will most likely go back to UC Saros. He just continues to play very, very well. And then Anton Hugo confirmed for the Dallas Stars. Kevin Lankinen starts for the Chicago Blackhawks. The Hurricanes did not disclose a starter. So it could be either Nedeljkovic or Reimer. You'd have to tune in for warmups there at 7:30 p.m. Eastern for that one. And then Robin Lehner was was the first goalie off the ice this morning for the Vegas Golden Knights. No surprise there. Fleury struggled last night, unfortunately. And the Capo Kakkonen started for the Wild last night, so we're expecting to see Cam Talbot on the tail end of the back-to-back. So yeah, let's get right into it here, starting up top with the Canadiens and the Montreal Canadiens and the Ottawa Senators. Just gonna create this contest super fast. 25 entrants, DFO. What's it, April 1st? Man, going on Twitter on April Fool's Day is the absolute worst. Okay. So that didn't work, but all right. Anyways, let's start with this first game here. I can't get sidetracked. I'll be here forever. So Montreal won. Again, they went off the other night. They're always going to pop into the top of the charts because their underlying numbers are so outstanding. It's pretty rare that they actually go off. But they did the other night. This actually looks like a pretty decent spot for them to go off again tonight, potentially. Realistically, they are kind of like a similar to like Colorado 3 in a way, right? Like their underlying numbers are so outstanding, but they kind of lack that game breaking talent, but they can definitely go off. And they're super cheap. They're not quite as cheap as they were the other night. Gallagher obviously still remains pretty expensive, but their underlying numbers are great. And when they get cheap enough, they are worth a flyer like they were the other night. So I don't know what is going on with this contest. But it's okay. And then Ottawa 1 looks pretty good. Montreal 2 looks solid. Montreal 3 still looks okay. Their underlying numbers are coming together. So in terms of the matchups in this game, nothing crazy really. Ottawa 1 is basically going to see the top 6. Ottawa 2 is going to see the bottom 6. Ottawa 3 is going to see the top 6. That's kind of how things are going to shake out in this game. From an offensive standpoint, Ottawa 1 looks really, really solid. Definitely the line that you're going to want to target from the Senators. That would be Brady Tkachuk at 7,000, Josh Norris 3,800, Evgeny Dadonov at 3,500. So again, their matchup basically just against the top 6 of the Canadians, which is not going to be good for them. It's going to be tough sledding against Danault and Nick Suzuki all night long. So as good as Ottawa kind of looks on paper based on their offensive numbers, it is going to be a bit of a struggle for them tonight, I think. It's going to be really difficult to get anything going. We saw what this team was capable of doing against Edmonton the other night. Obviously, Edmonton was on back-to-back on the road. That is tough, but still, like if they can shut down Connor McDavid to like literally 0 DraftKings points, Josh Norris could have a difficult time tonight. The one thing Ottawa does have going for them is they're on home ice. Usually play a little bit better on home ice, but I do have a little bit more interest on the Montreal side of things tonight. So as I mentioned, really, really good numbers from the Montreal Canadiens. Top line, the number 1 offensive numbers on the entire slate. But again, as we've mentioned before, they just kind of don't always live up to those expectations. But they do have a good matchup tonight. So as I mentioned, basically they're going to see a majority of the Tkachuk line and the Colin White line, which, the Tkachuk line, not very good defensively. The Colin White line, a little bit better defensively, but still below average. So it's a really good matchup for Montreal 1. Montreal 2, basically the exact same matchup. So both of them look really, really strong tonight. It's interesting because they're basically the same price. It's kind of going to boil down to preference. I really don't know. Like I never really play Montreal 1, and I don't want to chase that strong performance from the other night, but it does look like a pretty good opportunity for them. I would still probably lean towards Montreal 2 though, just because you get the full stack here on the top top power play unit. Even though it's kind of a 1B1 1A 1B situation for their power play units, they're all together where it's a little bit more fragmented for Montreal 1. So I would still lead Montreal 2 tonight, but if you want to, even if you're not going to play Gallagher and you're looking for just some kind of cheap options to punt, Tatar and Danault look okay at 37 and 4,500. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this game. Montreal 1's always, a bit of an anomaly. They're so good. Their underlying numbers are so good, but they don't always live up to that. And it's really hard to pinpoint when in the right time to play them is. But at a pretty reasonable price tonight, maybe tonight is a half decent night to do that. So Montreal 1, this might be one of the only times this year that I, get a little bit interested in them. We'll have to see if that works out, but I'm definitely not over the moon with them like I was with what is happening? All right. So the contest is created now. Sorry about that. I don't know what was going on there. DraftKings was getting mad at me. Hopefully that's not a sign of things to come, like we aren't going to fill it. But so yeah, second game of the night. Now that I'm not sidetracked any longer, we've got Boston and Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh is going to get Brandon Tanev back tonight by the looks of things. He was just activated from IR prior to me coming live here, so he's going to slot in on the third line. Doesn't really change a whole lot. Boston is going with pretty much the same lineup as the other night. So Pittsburgh 1 grades out the best. Boston 1 slightly behind them. Pittsburgh comes in at about $4,000 cheaper than Boston 1, so it's going to be pretty interesting. Both second lines look pretty solid. They've both played pretty well as of late as well. I was all over Boston 2 a couple nights ago. They went crazy. They look pretty interesting again tonight because the Penguins' bottom 9 is still pretty banged up. But Pittsburgh 2 has been playing pretty well as well. So from a matchup point of view, basically head-to-head, the top 2 lines will go. The second line of the Bruins will most likely see the middle 6 of the Penguins with a sprinkling of the Crosby line. So it's a pretty easy game to break down. Obviously, the 2 big lines will go head-to-head, which is going to make it difficult really for either one of them to get a lot going tonight. It's going to be basically, this matchup is really kind of change the slate one way or the other, because I'd imagine both lines will be pretty popular. The Penguins' top line has been solid, not quite as good as Boston won, offensively or defensively. So it's tough to say. The fact that Boston won, is on home ice, they get last change. They're going to want to get Bergeron out there as much as they can against Crosby. It could be a bit of a disappointing night from Pittsburgh one. Boston won too, though. It's almost impossible to predict this matchup because they're basically the exact same. So that's why I kind of have a little bit more interest in maybe just going to some of these other lines like Boston too. Pittsburgh, even though they're banged up, their depth has been okay defensively. Their third line's been really, really good, just super boring hockey. The second line's been pretty solid somehow defensively, even though they've, not the stalwarts defensively, individually, but they've been solid. So yeah, honestly, this game looks like it could be relatively low scoring, potentially pretty low event. And it makes me a little uneasy about paying up, 24,600 for Boston one or 20,800 for Pittsburgh one. It's just kind of, it looks like, a 3-2 hockey game. And then if each line scores one goal, you're probably, you're not going to win a contest with, paying that amount of money for one goal from these lines. So that's why I think it might make a little bit more sense to play like Boston 2, who's been pretty hot. Their offensive numbers are almost identical to Boston 1 right now. You're getting, terrific shot volume from Craig Smith, who, how much is he? He's only 3,200 still. He continues to shoot the puck a ton. Nick Ritchie on that top power play unit has been solid. So I think it makes a little bit more sense to maybe play that line tonight, just because obviously you're only paying $11,000 for them, and you're not breaking the bank, and it allows you to maybe play another top line that's in a better matchup tonight. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Vlader's been really good for the Bruins so far. Casey Smith's been awesome all season too. So if you factor in the two goaltenders in this game, it doesn't look all that promising really on either end. I forgot to go to the power play. Somehow the Canadians the Senators have the best power play advantage on the entire slate. So they've got they draw quite a few penalties. The Canadians take, I think, the most penalties on this entire slate, and then the Canadians' penalty kill is an absolute nightmare. So Ottawa, maybe it is going to be a bit more of a difficult night for them at 5v5, but on the power play, it looks like they could have some success tonight. Both the Bruins and the Penguins, slightly below average, both have just very good penalty kills, which kind of zaps a lot of their power plays value. McCann's been hot, and then Dan says been riding McCann as one off since Malkin got hurt. He's been on fire. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think going to Boston 2 or Pittsburgh 2 tonight makes a ton of sense. Boston's what's the matchup for Pittsburgh 2? I kind of forget. They're going to go primarily up against the third line of the Bruins, which is that Charlie Coyle line, which plays a very high event style of hockey. Give up 28 scoring chances, 12 high danger. So, again, Pittsburgh 2 looks solid, Boston 2 looks solid. I think you could go both ways there as opposed to paying up for the big prices. So if you've been riding McCann all this way, there's nothing that's jumps off the page to me that says avoid him tonight because he looks solid. Again, I don't really love kind of what's around him. Jason Zucker's really solid at 2,900. I don't love Evan Rodriguez. He's been okay, but I just don't. He's been relatively solid in terms of the shot volume as of late. So if you want to full stack them, sure. I would much rather full stack Boston too, but you can definitely get some value out of Pittsburgh too as well. All right, third game, so the Islanders and the Capitals. Another game that looks kind of relatively low scoring, two teams that aren't that great at 5v5. The Islanders were until Anders Lee got hurt, now not so much. So the only line that grades out positively tonight in this game is New York 2. The Islanders' second line. Islanders' first line grades up slightly below average, and then the Capitals just aren't very good at 5v5. So I know that people kind of get mad at me because they might come into a slate wanting to play Washington, and then I probably steer them the other way, but I'm just going by the numbers, and they're not that good at 5v5. So, and then obviously a pretty difficult matchup tonight too. So let's start with the Islanders' second line, because they grade out the best. So they're expected to go basically head-to-head with the Alexander Ovechkin line tonight. So the Ovechkin line has not been very good defensively, not very good. They're below average offensively. 42.9 Corsi 4 when TJ Oshie's on that line is not good at all. So it looks like a pretty good matchup here for New York too. Obviously, their offensive numbers are pretty average. It's nice to see Anthony Beauvillier back up on that line. They're much better with him. 28 scoring chances, 2.42 expected goals for, 13.8 high danger. So really solid offensive numbers. Nothing crazy. Overall, in the grand scheme of things on tonight's slate, they're pretty much they're the 26th best offensive line. So it's nothing that's like, holy shit, they're amazing, but their matchup is pretty solid. But like I said, this game nothing looks all that great. New York 1 is below average with Leo Komarov on the line. No surprise there. But the Islanders are terrific defensively, which really takes away a lot of the love for anybody from Washington. Washington's third line looks solid with Vrana and Lars Eller. They're going to basically go up against New York 1 and New York 3 most of the night. Both lines are pretty solid defensively. So I think maybe like Vrana as a one-off. He's only 3,700. His price is way down. He's ice cold right now. He hasn't scored in God knows how long. So his price is way down, but him and Eller have been pretty solid together in the past. So I think that maybe there's a decent opportunity for him as a one-off option there at 3,700. That's far too cheap for how talented he is. He is only on the second power play unit too, though, now. So his value is definitely coming down. He's definitely ice cold, but at super low ownership, shot in the dark, but in an okay matchup, I guess the matchup isn't great, but their numbers are solid. So again, not a whole lot of interest in this game, really, one way or the other. On the power play, both teams negatively. The Capitals do not look very good tonight. The Islanders are incredibly disciplined. The Capitals do not draw any penalties at all. Their power play is still below average, and the Islanders' power penalty kill is okay. So. Just not a whole lot of interest here. It looks like a pretty low-scoring game. If that steers you one way or the other to one of these goalies, that would make sense to me. Overall, where are they here? Semyon Varlamov is the 11th goalie out of how many are there tonight? What is there? 18 goalies tonight. So yeah, he is ninth. He's ninth out of right in the middle of the pack, and then Samsonov down 14th. So. They're both modestly priced, but it just looks like kind of a low event game. All right, so for the Florida Panthers, Anthony Duclair is out 7 to 10 days. So that means Mason Marchment will move up into the top 6. He will play with Noel Acciari and Carter Verhaeghe. Brett Connolly remains on the top line with Wenberg and Johnny Huberdeau. So obviously, I've said I haven't really been playing the Huberdeau line much this year. And then he shut me up immediately. I think he scored like 17 seconds into the game the other day. The Acciari line had a pretty good night as well. But all things considered, they didn't dominate the game as the box score might suggest. They were just simply okay. Calvin Pickard struggled early on, and that's kind of what just sent them on fire basically for the night. Made for a pretty good night for Boston. But overall, their numbers are not all that weren't all that outstanding. Very meh game from the top line. Like 63% Corsi for is good, but only 7 shot attempts in 11 and a half minutes is not very good. The second line, 50% Corsi for, just a very low event game. Meanwhile, from the Red Wings' point of view, not a whole lot. The top line struggled mightily. Which isn't surprising. And then this Mantha line really just didn't get anything going. They controlled the play a little bit, but they didn't get anything going. So, it looked like obviously a dominant game from the Panthers on the, from the outside, and maybe a lot of people are going to go back to them tonight, I would imagine. And to me, I don't like. They look okay for sure, but it's just they don't look like glaringly obvious to me tonight. I mean, if you look at the numbers here. Very, barely above average for Florida 1, barely above average for Florida 2. Same with Detroit 1. So it just looks like another meh game. Just kind of a boring slate so far. So yeah, the top line for the Panthers, the Huberdeau line is going to see everybody except for Detroit 3. And as I've mentioned before, the Red Wings are pretty decent defensively, not great. The top line's their worst defensive line right now. But no matchup really jumps off the page, and Florida 1 is not very good offensively. Just 7.5 high danger chances, 4 per 60, not great. The second line is probably their best line, the Acciari Carter Verhaeghe line. But again, Carter Verhaeghe 5,700, Acciari 4,800. I'm just not that excited about it. I think it's a lot of money. Verhaeghe obviously 2 goals on 6 shots, played 20 minutes. If you want to chase that, I think it's fine. It is obviously a good matchup. Thomas Greiss has not been very good this year. The Red Wings aren't a very good team, but on paper, they don't look that bad, and it just doesn't look like that advantageous of a matchup. So, if you're building multiple lineups, I would definitely have a little bit of Florida, maybe a little bit of Huberdeau, a little bit of Verhaeghe, but I wouldn't have, I'm not going all in on them tonight. I hope that their ownership is high and that they kind of fail. tonight. That's kind of what I'm banking on because, again, it just doesn't, that top line was outstanding, but like, you can't tell me that Verhaeghe and Duclair were doing that by themselves, right? Like, it was all Alexander Barkov. So I would expect them to, continue to be just sort of average, and Detroit can definitely handle them without Barkov. On the power play, they do seem to have a bit of an advantage. The power play is really solid, but again, without Barkov, without Hornqvist, it's definitely not nearly as good as these numbers might suggest. The Red Wings penalty kill slightly below average for this slate. So, again, it is what it is with this game. I'm not overly excited about it. Maybe it's me being biased, but I'm the first person to admit that the Red Wings aren't very good. So I don't think it's really my bias talking. It's just the numbers. The numbers aren't jumping off the page for me. So not a whole lot of interest there. All right. Where there is interest in that game, though, I don't know if you noticed it the first time I went to the starting goalies page, but Chris Driedger, number 1 ranked goaltender on tonight's slate. Probably pretty unsurprising there. He's been really, really solid all season long. He is 8,400, so super expensive. Vegas loves them. He's got the 3rd best odds to win on tonight's slate. The shot volume should be, a little bit better than that of Andrei Vasilevsky and Igor Shesterkin, who are the other high-priced net miners. The expected goals for or against is among the lowest, 3rd lowest on the entire slate. So all things look really, really good for Driedger tonight. He's the number 1 ranked goaltender on the slate. Meanwhile, Thomas Greiss, 2nd worst. All right, the Lightning will go back to Vasilevsky. So that really kind of just I was not on the Blue Jackets the other night. They actually played okay, but now that Vasilevsky's back, it's just absolutely not. No, thank you. The top 2 lines of Tampa Bay are the only ones I grade out positively tonight. I'm not 100% sold on the Blue Jackets lines, but these are what the team gave us this afternoon. Riley Nash is going to replace Kevin Stenlund. Max Domi is going to go to the middle. So according to the team, it's going to be a straight swap Stenlund for Nash. I had no interest in line A to begin with, and now I certainly don't. Domi is not a good center. Riley Nash is not a first-line winger, so I don't know if these lines stick. I really don't expect them to. I think the team's probably wrong. But maybe, they should be right, but I don't know if they are. So yeah, just no interest at all. Like, I didn't have a lot of interest to begin with, and then that just really, no thank you. All right, so this game, again, pretty easy to break down from a matchup point of view. It's going to be Tampa 1 against Columbus 2, Tampa 2 against Columbus 1. And then basically the bottom, the 3rd line, I'll just see the bottom 9. So pretty easy. So we'll start with Tampa 1. Obviously really, really good offensive numbers from that Braden Point line, 32 scoring chances for, 13 high danger, really nice numbers from them. A little bit better than Tampa 2. Tampa 2s are solid. And then Tampa 3, they continue to be, just really good at 5v5, but not that great offensively and not worth chasing. So as I mentioned, it's going to be Tampa 1 versus Columbus 2. So again, really good matchup, 27 scoring chances against, 9 high danger. And then Tampa 2 will go up against Columbus 1, which is a little, so basically it balances out. Tampa 1's a little bit better offensively than Tampa 2, but Columbus 1 is a little bit shittier defensively than Columbus 2. So at the end of the day, they're almost identical. To me, I wish they'd make our life a little bit easier and just put Stamkos on the top line. We'd be like, boom, play the top line. It's easy. But they don't. So we got to kind of make the tough decisions. Palat, 5,900, Point 6,400, Stamkos 6,700. They're all pretty reasonably priced for how good they are. On the power play, they've got a positive advantage tonight. The only thing really working against them, the Columbus is very disciplined. They have a good penalty kill. So a power play stack approach probably isn't great. It seems like they'll get the majority of their damage done on at 5v5. So to me, I think that I prefer the top line a little bit, just because I think Tyler Johnson's pretty good and can definitely score on that top line. So with him just being 3,600, I would rather play Tyler Johnson at 3,600 than maybe Alex Killorn or Anthony Cirelli at 4,700. Obviously, Killorn's got the top power play unit exposure, which helps him. But Cirelli, he's had his moments, but overall, he's not a super, he's not like an offensive dynamo. He's got 21 points in 29 games this year for sure, but he hasn't scored in 6 games. He's only got 2 assists over that span. He hasn't been all that great, and he's not a guy that you expect to put up insane numbers, which the same can't be said about Braden Point, right? That's what you're expecting out of him. So I prefer Tampa 1 a little bit to Tampa 2. If you want to stack Tampa 1 and just throw Stamkos in, into the mix and get a little bit more power play correlation, I think that's fine too. If you're having a hard time to breaking it down, because like I said, breaking down these first few games, there's not a whole lot that jumps out. And to me, Tampa looks really solid tonight. So if you want to throw more of your eggs in the Tampa Bay basket because these top games don't look great, then that's completely reasonable to me because, they look really good. The other thing about Tampa Bay is they've been struggling like lately. So people might not, like, their ownership might not be that high because they haven't been good lately and people have been getting burned by them. So their ownership should be pretty average. You'd expect a lot of ownership to go to New York tonight. And I think it's a pretty good spot for Tampa Bay. And they're going to have to start winning again soon. So why not tonight? It looks like a really good matchup for them. So I think it's a good night to be playing the Lightning. And as I said, I'm not going to be playing the Blue Jackets. All right. So New York and Buffalo, I mentioned a minute ago, I think a lot of ownership is obviously going to go to New York. They're just always popular because they're an exciting team. Zibanejad was outstanding last year, made tons of people tons of money. So people just, have, some loyalty to him. And they look good again tonight. I've always been a fan of New York 2 as opposed to New York 1, and that's not changing tonight at all. So from a matchup standpoint, really no hard matching here from Buffalo whatsoever. At least with the top two lines of the Rangers. New York 1 is going to see primarily the top six of the Sabres, but still going to see some of the bottom six. New York 2, on the other hand, is going to see a little bit more of the fourth line for the Sabres, which is a disaster. They're terrible defensively. The third line's the worst by far, but the fourth line is a close second. On the overall slate, Buffalo's fourth line is the second worst. The Sabres' third line is the worst defensive line. So obviously you're going to want to attack them for sure. So no one's going to see more of Buffalo 4 than New York 2. And then the depth pieces of the Rangers are going to see the third line more than anything. So that's kind of unfortunate if you want to target these top two lines, but that does open up some avenues for some potential lower-owned Rangers. Maybe it's an Lafreniere, maybe it's a Philip Heidel in just an absolute plus matchup with Buffalo's bottom six. So, or Buffalo's third line, I should say. So overall, I much prefer New York 2 tonight. They are their best offensive line. The numbers still aren't great for whatever reason. The Rangers aren't that good at 5v5, but they've obviously shown to be, improving as of late. They've played much better lately. So again, these numbers are on the season as a total and they do change over time, but it takes some time after a really sluggish start. So they are showing signs of life, but Panarin's been really, really good since coming back. Just, simply outstanding. So I do prefer them. Capo Caco really seems to be a nice fit on that line. He's really cheap at $3,200. And that's the other reason that I really like New York 2 over New York 1 is the price. I mean, obviously New York 1 is going to fully correlate in the top power play unit. Actually, no, they don't, do they? Buchnevich is on PP2, is he not? I think he is. Yeah. Okay. So it's just the price, right? The price is so much better. You get basically $2,500 savings by going to New York 2. So I do like them quite a bit more than New York 1. But if you want to, if you want to ride the hot hand with Zibanejad, I'm not going to fault you. But New York 2 would be my pick. On the other side, I think Buffalo 1 is still okay. I mentioned them yesterday. I mentioned Mittelstadt as being a pretty decent option at his price, a really good punt, and he came through for us. He scored a goal. So if you punted him, great. He played only 12 minutes, which is a little bit disappointing, but I would assume that was because most of that game was in hand and they were getting their defensive lines out there. So I still think at 2,600, Mittelstadt looks fine. The Rangers have been better defensively as of late, so it's not a great matchup, and on a back-to-back, it's definitely not super appealing. Like I probably wouldn't full stack Buffalo 1, but I think Mittelstadt at 2,600 is still worth a punt. Flyers 2 the other night did good, so I'd imagine New York 2 is good as well. Yeah, it's basically the exact same matchup, and they're not quite as good. They should be better. Like they have Panarin, but they just haven't been. But like Ryan Strom's been on fire too lately, right? Like so that line's just red hot right now, and 6,100 for Ryan Strome is a little hefty, but he's on like a 9 or something game point streak or something like that. He's red hot. And then Fox, he was on the cover photo of today's show. He's been just absolutely electric all season long. He's scorching hot right now. So they're going to be massively popular, no doubt about it. But they look outstanding. There's a reason they're going to be hugely popular tonight. If the Rangers goalie leaves the net, Montour may hammer home another goal. He had a nice game yesterday. Yeah, and Montour's a pretty good deep punt too. I liked him a little bit yesterday. I didn't play him, but he's been playing more minutes. They really they've been kind of giving him and Miller more 5v5 ice time. And his shot volume solid. He's been blocking a fair amount of shots. Obviously, people are probably going to roster him after 2 goals last night, but we're not chasing that. But his floor is pretty solid for a $3,600 defenseman on DraftKings. So I think he's solid. I think Mittelstadt's solid from Buffalo, but I wouldn't really go too much further than that. All right, Nashville and Dallas. So let's play the Dallas drinking game, which is Roope Hintz a game time decision? The answer is yes, he is. So cheers to that. So Roope Hintz, as always, a game time decision. That top line I've mentioned before, super, super good. Really like them again tonight. Second line with Radek Fax up there doesn't do a whole lot for me. And then the third line is just their shutdown line. So not a whole lot of interest outside of Dallas 1, really. They grade out the best by a mile. Nashville 1 looks pretty solid as well. Dallas 2 looks meh. From a matchup standpoint, I got to stop saying it like that. I got to think of new words to say. Tyler Johnson is a center on DraftKings. Is that a real thing? He is. That's a nightmare. Yeah, that's stupid. He is. But, you can make it work still. So Dallas 2 is basically going to play against everybody except for Nashville 3 for the most part. You'd like them to see a little bit more of Nashville 3, but it's not really a hard match situation here in from any line. It's basically just going to be all 4 lines against all 4 lines, with the exception of a few minutes here and there with some of these lines. So you're basically just going to want to play the best offensive lines, which is the top lines from both teams. Nashville 1's been playing really well, even without Philip Forsberg. So they're an option. Ilya Kolvinen has been, one of my favorites. He's cooled off a little bit, but in terms of the shot volume, but he's still scoring at an alarming rate. I think it's going to end. It's got to end eventually. He's one guy that can obviously, carry a super high shooting percentage because he's got such a good shot, but he's running on pure luck right now in terms of how often he's scoring on his limited shot attempts. But the ice time continues to climb. He looks solid at 4,200. That top line, I wish Ryan Johansson provided a little bit more of a stable floor, but he doesn't. He's risky, from a cash game play as a GPP play. He's risky in terms of any floor at all. It doesn't exist, but he does have some upside. And then Victor Arvidsson's rock solid. So I do like that top line a little bit tonight, but I'm much more interested in Dallas 1. If Hintz plays, their numbers are outstanding. 2.84 expected goals, 431 high scoring chances, 13 high danger. So very similar numbers to Nashville 1, but they'll have a better matchup against Nashville's middle 6, which is below average defensively, as opposed to Nashville goes up against a really talented Dallas defense. So I much prefer Dallas 1. I think that you can make a case for Arvidsson as a one-off play. His shot volume is as consistent as anybody on the slate. Tolvanen looks okay just because he's super hot. He's the shooting option on that power play now. But Dallas is really good defensively. I liked Hudobin the other night. I like him again tonight, so I'm probably not going to play a whole lot of Nashville because Dallas is just too good defensively. But Dallas 1 looks really, really solid. If you want to go down to Dallas 2, I think it's fine. Jamie Benn's just 5,300. He hasn't scored in seemingly since the middle of March, I don't think. So I just, I would just stick with the line that's red hot. And as long as Roope Hintz is in the lineup, Dallas 1's been scoring. So I wouldn't overthink it too much because they're still very reasonably priced, right? You get 5,200 for Robertson, 57 for Hintz, and 6,600 for Pavelski. You can fit that in with anything. So I like them a lot more than anybody in this game. So that is that. From the goalie's point of view, Hudobin, the 4th best goaltender on the slate. He is the best goaltender under 8,000. So I liked him the other night. I like him again tonight. Obviously, he almost came through for us the other night. Didn't, but maybe tonight is the night. In terms of the power play, both teams below average. Both teams, just their power play is not very good. The penalty kills are okay, and it's nothing really there. The Rangers do have a power play. I think third largest power play advantage tonight. Sabres penalty kill is not very good. Rangers power play is solid. So yeah, that's that. All right, we've got the 8th game of the night is the Blackhawks and the Hurricanes. So the Hurricanes will change their lineup up a little bit tonight. It kind of sucks, but it is what it is. We got to deal with it. Brock McGinn goes back to the top line. Niederreiter drops down with Jordan Staal. It's terrible. But it doesn't really change anything for me because I'm still narrowing in on that second line. They look like the best option by a mile in this game. Svechnikov scored for us the other night. He's still only 5,400. He's by far one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. Again, one-offing him makes a ton of sense. If you want to stack him with Trocheck, that's fine. Trocheck, unfortunately, has not been on the top power play unit since returning. It's been Martin Necas, which is okay, but he's had 6 shots in his return to the lineup with an assist on that Svechnikov goal. So they look like a solid duo. Again, I'd probably leave Fast off, but if you need to punch him just for the salary savings, he's minimum priced. He just doesn't provide a whole lot in the way of offense, really no floor at all. So, but Svechnikov and Trocheck look like a dynamic duo and a really good mini stack option. So they look great. Their matchup is basically going to be just against the top 6 of the Blackhawks. The Patrick Kane line, not very good defensively. The second line's been solid, really, really good. But it's not a matchup that scares me because Carolina 2 has been really good. 36 scoring chances, 4/60 is outstanding. So, I like them a lot more than any other line in this game. I like them as a mini stack. The top line, again, it looks okay. Their offensive numbers are coming around. Carolina, the way their lineup is built right now, doesn't look great defensively. But even though Chicago won that game the other night, Carolina dominated. It was like an old school Carolina performance. They used to do this all the time, just dominate puck possession, dominate the game, and lose the games they couldn't score. That's what happened the other night. So I wouldn't expect a whole lot coming from Chicago again tonight. But I do still like Kirby Dach and Dylan Strome. I said to mini stack them the other night. They scored a goal. Dach's just 3,200. Strome's just 2,700. Dach has been just playing like he didn't play 20 minutes like he did his first game. He only played 13, but they were trying to hold on to a lead, and that's not really his MO. They used David Kampf for that. So that's kind of why his ice time was a little bit limited, but I would imagine they'd be trailing tonight and they'll get Dach out there a bunch. So I like Dach at 3,200 and Strome at 2,700. The matchup is certainly not great, but at that price point, you're not really looking for a great matchup. They're going to see a lot of Carolina 1 and Carolina 3. And realistically, the matchup isn't too bad. Both those lines have not been great defensively the way they're currently configured. So there is potential there for Chicago 3. Dach still in the top power play unit as well, which bodes well for him in terms of the power play. It is below average because the Hurricanes have a tremendous penalty kill, but at 3,200, you're just paying for the opportunity, and that's what you're getting with Kirby Dach. Carolina's power play advantage is quite large, second biggest on the slate. The Blackhawks do not have a good penalty kill. The Hurricanes have a very good power play, so it looks really good for the Hurricanes tonight. I just don't like. I love Sebastian Aho as a player. I love Martin Necas as a player. So if you want to mini stack them as opposed to Carolina 2, that's completely fine. I would leave Brock McGinn off that. You're basically just going with mini stacks, basically, if you're playing Carolina, because their lineup is just so weird. But Necas has been unbelievable this year, and playing with Sebastian Aho, his upside is obviously high. So they look okay, not quite as good as Carolina 2 does, but they're basically the same price. So it's kind of just a preference thing for you at that point. LOL hints game time decision drinking game. Raiders says Saros has been amazing. Yeah, he's been absolutely outstanding, which obviously limits Dallas 1's ceiling, but Nashville's been on such a ridiculous run right now by not really playing all that great that it's got to come to an end eventually. So, I don't love Dallas 1 on a whole slate perspective, but from breaking down each game, they are definitely the best option in that game. And then Billy McThrill says cheers. Yes, cheers to Rupe Hintz. I forgot to mention, the show is now brought to you by our friends at Jock Market. Again, if you were here yesterday, I mentioned they are not available in Canada as of now. If you're in the United States, you need to check them out. They have all these sports available, and it's basically a DFS meets a stock exchange. It's super cool. Can't wait for them to come to Canada if you are a Canadian. But yeah, final game of the night, we've got the Golden Knights and the Wild. So I've been all over Vegas too as of late, and they've been paying off in spades for me lately. They look outstanding again tonight, still very reasonably priced. Marchessault 5,500, Carlson 4,900, Riley Smith 4,300. They're probably my favorite line on the entire slate. They've been playing great lately, and their matchup is ridiculous tonight. So they're going to go head-to-head with that Kirill Kaprizov line. I would imagine Minnesota's lines changed a little bit tonight, so it's going to be difficult to really get a lot of information out of this. But like a lot of this information might not hold up exactly as I'm saying it now, but it's not going to change much because they don't really have any way of configuring their lineup where they're really that good. They're just very thin. They went through a ridiculous stretch there, but overall they're very mediocre. The way the lineup's currently constructed, they're a tire fire at 5v5. They're not good defensively. All four lines well below average. Defensively, three of the four lines well below average offensively. So it's not very good the way things are right now. But Vegas 2 is going to go basically head-to-head with the top line, which is right now the Kirill Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rask line. I would imagine it'll be some form of Kirill Kaprizov, Zuccarello, and whoever. And overall, they have not been very good defensively regardless. So it's an absolute smash spot for Vegas 2. And at that price point, it makes just too much sense. Tonight you can play them with virtually anybody. Vegas 1. They look okay. Chandler Stevenson was suspended for 3 games. Cody Glass will replace him in the middle at minimum price, which makes them kind of interesting. But again, the way the power plays are configured right now, it's all Vegas 2 with Mark Stone and Theodore on the top unit. So Vegas 2 still just makes too much sense to me. Cody Glass, he's similar to like a Ryan Johansson. He basically has zero floor. But playing on the top line with Pacioretty and Stone, who have been really good this year, gives you some upside. But Pacioretty at 8,300, I mean, he's as expensive as like the entire second line by itself. So to me, I would just rather play that second line. But if you want to pay up for the top line, Cody Glass will definitely give you some salary relief tonight. But they don't correlate on the power play because Stone's on the top unit. So it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to pay up for them when you can just, take what you get on that power play and the 5v5 dominance of Vegas 2. From a Minnesota standpoint, no interest at all. Their lineup is just a nightmare right now. They're ice cold. Their power play sucks. They just aren't good right now. And it's not a good matchup with Vegas. So Robin Lehner doesn't actually grade out that well, which is surprising to me, but I do have a little bit of interest in him tonight. But at 8,000, it's really hard to make an argument for him. When you've got Igor Shesterkin at 8,000, I think that just makes way more sense. If it's an ownership decision, Robin Lehner will be lower owned than Shesterkin, but if you want to go that route. But if you're just looking for the safer play at 8K, it's definitely Shesterkin. And then, you only got to pay up a couple $100 for the likes of Vasilevsky or Chris Driedger. So, tonight looks like the Knights pay up their goalie. Vasilevsky is as safe as they get tonight, in my opinion. The Blue Jackets suck. And he's the best goalie in the world. So he's as safe as you can get tonight. Driedger looks really solid as well, but I obviously for the extra $100, Andre Vasilevsky is a much better goalie. And it's almost the exact same matchup. So the only concern with Vasilevsky would be the shot volume, but I mean, you're still going to get 15 points out of him at minimum, right? It's not going to be nothing. It's not going to be anything lower than that. You're still going to get your 14 points and whatever. And then there's obviously upside for more. How many shots did McElhinney face the other night? He faced 20 shots. So that's kind of what you're running the risk in. But he let in 2 goals on 20 shots, where Vasilevsky probably lets in 1, maybe half. I don't want to say 0 because then that's jinxing him, but maybe half a goal from Vasilevsky on 20 shots against the Blue Jackets. So he's as safe as they get, really. In terms of the defense tonight, again, I always struggle to look at it in time, but David Savard looks like he's pretty interesting if you want to just kind of a one-off cheap play. He's a shot blocking machine. He's only 3,300. Radko Gudas has become a bit of a shot blocking machine. Not become, he's always kind of been that, but he's a shot blocking machine as well at 3,100. Provides a pretty stable floor, plays a decent amount of minutes. K'Andre Miller, his offensive production has dropped off a little bit as of late, but still just 3,100. Obviously an outstanding matchup. He's been very consistent in terms of getting a couple shots on net, blocking a couple shots every single game. Oh my God, is there another postponed game? Oh, the Canucks are postponed through Thursday. Okay. After him, I still think Dante Fabro is fine if you want to play the Nashville route, just because of how many minutes he's playing. He's not really been that great. Nick Hag at 3,600, if you can't pay up for like the Theodores of the world, he's been super, super consistent. Ice time dropped a little bit with Pietrangelo returning, but still looks really good. Those are kind of like your basement bottom guys. If you want to go up a little bit, obviously, Fox is probably the best option on the entire slate, but Hamilton and Hedman look great. They're both in outstanding matchups as well. I think that Lozon, again, if you want to punt him, he didn't do much for us the other night, but playing with McAvoy at minimum price, he's going to play a ton of minutes, so you look fine there. It's just, again, like to me, I'm always just, if you're playing GPP, you're always trying to pair them up with, and find correlation with your guys, and that's what you need to be doing tonight. I think Jacob Trouba is really solid at 4,300. Some of these Carolina defensemen look really good. You got Brett Pesce at 4,100. He's been solid. You've got Jakub Slavin at 4,000. He's outstanding. Plays massive minutes. So there's a lot of D options tonight. Gustav Forsling played. What did he play? 21 minutes in his debut on the top pair. He looks really solid as well. So there's a ton of there's a ton of options on D tonight. Alexander asks, is Netchas at 5,300 solid, or are there better options? Netchas is really good. I think he's a great option. He's on that top power play unit. He plays with Sebastian Aho. They do have a good matchup. So he is as good as they get, really, at around that price point. I prefer Svechnikov at 5,400. I think he's a little bit of a safer play, a little bit of a higher upside play. I think they have a little bit of a better matchup. So if you have the extra $100, I prefer Svechnikov. Marchessault at 5,500 is very good in that price range as well. He's really good, but there's a handful of guys in that price range that are all really good. I think Arvidsson's really good at 5,500. There's a lot in that mid price there, but he's fine for sure. So, that's pretty much going to do it for today's DFS show, brought to you by Jock Market. Please, on your way out, smash that like button if you could. Yesterday, I actually had my first downvote, and it was like the biggest night for the show. It didn't add up. Maybe somebody missed it, hit the wrong one. I don't know what it is, but smash that up button for me if you could, because we got dislikers now, so we got to kind of offset that. So Krejci or Strome? I'm assuming you mean Ryan Strome or Dylan Strome. Probably Dylan Strome, since they're in the same price range. Probably Krejci. If it's Dylan Strome, it would be Krejci. If it's Ryan Strome, then I would prefer Ryan Strome. You can't please everyone. No, I'm trying. What did we do? I've been going. This has got to be like my 90th episode? Maybe not. No, not 90. Like 60th? And it was my first downvote, so it's a pretty good run. 3 months, one downvote. It's not too bad. Could do worse. But, mention if it's Ryan or Dylan. I'm assuming it's Dylan. But Connolly min price, but you mentioned Florida 1 are weak. Thoughts? Yeah, Connolly was super popular last week too. I don't love him as a player. He scored 1 goal and 1 shot. I don't think that they're very good at 5v5. He is on the top power play unit, if I'm not mistaken. I know that they kind of shuffled him up a little bit, but I'm pretty sure he's okay at 2,800. I don't love it, but the fact that he's on the top power play unit helps bolster it a little bit. But at 2,800, you can do. There's not a whole lot down there, right? So at 2,800, you can do worse. But overall, he's not the strongest play. You're looking to get lucky, like you did the other night with 1 goal and 1 shot. But the opportunities will probably be few and far between. Around that price point, 2,800. Capo Caco. I much prefer Caco at 3,200 if you can get there. I probably would prefer even Cody Glass. I think he's got much higher upside, even though his floor is just as low. Even Zucker looks fine. Yeah, to me, 2,700 Charlie Coyle is interesting too. I didn't really get a chance to talk with them, but their matchup's really good. He just doesn't shoot anymore, which I don't understand. He's starting to shoot a little bit more. But at 2,700, he's pretty good. In terms of their matchup, Boston 3 is going head-to-head with Pittsburgh 2. Okay, I was wrong about that matchup. Oh, their matchup isn't good, but their numbers have been outstanding. Charlie Coyle and Anders Bjork have been ridiculous in a small sample size. But yeah, to me, you shouldn't have to get crazy punty because there are so many like just good mid price options tonight. But if you do, turn to the big board and find them. It's very easy to spot them here. You got Kako looks really good. Josh Norris looks okay. Glass looks solid. All that stuff. So yeah. Anyways, that's gonna do it for today's DFO DFS show, brought to you by our friends at Chalk Market. Please smash the like button on your way out. And here, I'll post that contest one more time. Hopefully it fills. I always create it late, and it doesn't fill until like the last minute. So hopefully, please join it so that we get it filled up. It's only $5. I'm sure if you guys listen to the show, you've got enough bankroll to join that contest. So fill it up for me now, so I don't have to send it over to Twitter. We currently only have 7 out of 25 people, so fill it up. See you guys back here tomorrow.